A very spirited welcome to all of you to this roundtable. It gives me great pleasure to have you all here to discuss this very topical topic: learn, lead, innovate, the evolving role of learning in talent transformation. Talent transformation essentially means harnessing the potential and skills of employees to help them reach leadership positions while achieving strategic business objectives for the organization. In other words, the trajectory of talent transformation entails three posts: learn, lead, innovate. Understandably, the cycles have become very narrow in nature with the prevailing uncertainty and unpredictability in the business environment. Employees today need a greater understanding of market trends and continuously equip themselves with new skills to remain nimble and better disposed to opportunities that the change brings. Thus, innovation is critical for performance, productivity, and professional development. After all, Steve Jobs once said, innovation is ability to see change as an opportunity, not a threat. Globalization is at its peak, and new technologies surfacing at every level are reinventing the skilling ecosystem across geographies. L&D is much more than providing training for the workforce alone. In essence, it is about building a culture of continuous learning throughout the organization that emphasizes the role of coaching, feedback, leadership, and ownership. It is, however, not surprising that a strong continuous learning culture is not implemented overnight and requires powerful transformations in process and mindset. So, in this roundtable, we will cover what organizations and L&D teams should keep in mind when transforming the L&D function in order to keep up with many challenges we are facing today. With that, let's go around. I'll go around with a round of introduction. So I am Pooja Bothra. I am associate editor at ETHR World, and I'll be your moderator for this session.
Yogi Sriram, 45 years in human resources.
Rajesh, I lead HR for Global Logic. It's a Hitachi Group company. I lead HR for them for APAC.
Hi, my name is Mona Puri and I represent Paraxel. I lead the HR for India and Asia Pacific. Thank you.
Hi, this is Deepak Arora. I head Global Learning and Development for Birlasoft.
Hi, this is Subnesh Sharma from VBDN Technologies. I take care of entire HR, operations, BPHR, OD, all sort of initiatives, having 16 years of experience. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sandeep Girotra. I am the HR manager for DSIM Shriram.
Hi everyone, very good morning. I'm Ruchi Batra. I head HR for Beetle Teletech Limited.
Namaskar everyone, I'm Kunal Sood. I'm the Director of Human Resources for Holiday Inn, part of Intercontinental Hotel Group, and I have approximately 18 years.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm Sudeep. I'm heading Volvo Asia for India and Southeast Asia as a CHRO.
Hi, good morning everyone. This is Abhinav Arthavs. I'm associated with Head of InCorp and head the HR for them in the enterprise area.
Hi, good evening. Good morning everyone. This is Ashish Banga. I'm Vice President HR with Paytm. I've been here for 3 years and I have overall 17 years of experience.
Good morning, everyone. I am Neha Mayanka. I am a Director HR with Ameriprise Financials, and I have close to about 17 years of overall work experience in HR. Thank you.
Hi, morning. My name is Smriti Chand, and I'm heading HR for South Asia for Intertech.
Hi again. Good morning. Raghav Gupta, Managing Director of Coursera. I know, Ashish, you're looking forward to Friday evening. We're all as well, but good to be meeting you. Thank you.
All of you for these wonderful introduction. Now I'm absolutely delighted and honored to welcome Yogi once more to this roundtable. He's flown all the way from Mumbai, and I'd like him to address us and help us kickstart this brainstorming session. Over to you, Yogi.
Thank you, Pooja. Can you all guys hear me clearly? Yeah. So I don't think I should give you a big lecture on what is going to happen in the next 2 hours, because this is going to be a democratic, participative process where I believe everybody contributes, and we're going to only increase our knowledge and sharing perhaps by contributing towards the table. However, I thought I will share some preliminary thoughts. The preliminary thoughts are funneled as follows. First is, my job here as a keynote speaker is not to just talk, but to also raise some questions. So I'm asking myself as I, put my thoughts together for this little talk about what is the relevance of some of the theories that we go through in learning and development. By the way, Pooja, of all the galaxy of words in the topic, I focus more on learning and development, since the roundtable is about that. So I asked myself, what is the theories that we remember? What is the theories we've gone through? And are the theories to be just swept across the table, and do we say, wo to professor ke liye hai? Or do we revisit them in the context of modern challenges of learning? Of course, there are so many challenges that one would find it difficult to completing and discussing all the challenges. For example, if you take the IT sector, the attrition is something like 24%. Even TCS, which is the poster boy of low attrition, talks about 19% without recording infant mortality. So whom do you train? Do you train only for domain? Do you train for behaviors? How do you manage this? But coming back to, if we are serious about developing a learning and development agenda, what is the relevance of some of the theories is what I want to begin with. The second is, for whatever it's worth, I'd like to share a little bit of work that we've done in an organization called Larsen and Toubro. The group has, of course, is a conglomerate with many types of companies, a financial services company, 3 IT companies, and the main bread and butter or project management company called Larsen Toubro. The third part is maybe a little bit of coincidence that I would find Raghav here also talking about the same topic, which is on what is the edutech industry saying about the learning styles and learning in general, about whether it is young or old or whichever demography you belong to. So that's the pattern I want to follow, if it's okay with all you guys. So I picked up some theories. There are theories which cover something called behaviorism. Behaviorism is about Frederick Taylor. And Taylor always used, I'm sorry it's cut a bit, but I'll call it out. Taylor talked about how you use reward and punishment for learning. And my concern is, when we come out of school into college, I don't know which schools you guys went to, over lunch maybe we'll discuss, but most schools in India especially believe in implanting ideas in your mind. So you are not at the center of the learning, the instructor is at the center of learning. And then you get punished or rewarded based on how quick you've learned or whatever it is. Then there is, of course, community learning, there's constructivism, there is humanism, and various theories which go behind learning. But what I like to pick up today morning is some of these which are quite interesting actually and quite controversial actually. One is called the situated learning theory. And the situated learning theory is something that was authored by Jean Lave and Etienne Weng, which says that the learning is not planned, it's in the situation itself. So when I go to my bhajiwala, as they call it in Bombay, sabziwala as they call it in Delhi, I don't know how he's able to add up, 450 grams of beans and ek pav of lauki, or maybe 1 kilo of tomatoes, all in a second, whereas I need a calculator. The learning is in the situation because he's learned over the years with fractions. He or she has learned with fractions, with the intuitive logic of this is how the fractions add up or subtract or whatever it is. Jean Lave did her research in a place called Liberia. Liberation of slaves is how that word came, Liberia, and which is a part of Africa. And what she discovered during her research is that tailors have a style of learning when not taught formally, but put in the situation of sewing the buttons on the handcuff first, then doing the collars and so on. So the learning is because of the social setting, the context, it's not planned, it doesn't suit the typical public school style of learning. It is learning which is sometimes serendipitous, it is learning which is unplanned. The learning is in the experience. Zygarnik effect is another very interesting phenomena which is old. Bluma Zygarnik is a Russian lady who was a psychologist in the early 20th century. And she talked about if there is an incomplete task, you tend to remember the incomplete task better than completion of a task. So remember the time when you took an exam. Say 30 days after the exam, did you remember anything? Doubtful, I didn't. So if I learned something in law or whatever it is, it was behind me. But if there is a case study that we're discussing and it's incomplete, you probably go back to the case study with the learning that or with the memory of wanting to complete it. So how she discovered this was very interesting. They went to celebrate an event in a restaurant, and she found that the waiter in the restaurant was taking orders without writing anything and not forgetting anything. But in the next order that he took, if he was asked, what was the order you took last, he would be completely blank. But during the time when he took the orders, he remembered everything because the order was incomplete. Kolb's 4 stages of learning is all about experiential learning. Kolb wrote his book on experiential learning in 1984, way back in 1984. And what he said is experiential learning is something which is a process, and it all depends on how you experience the learning and experiencing the learning doesn't mean you go through it through an induction program or something, because there are different styles of learning. And he talks about a cycle which works like a spiral, okay? He talks about concrete experience, doing or having an experience, reflecting on what is the experience taught me. Then he talks about abstract conceptualization from the reflective observation, and then the active experimentation. So you can jump in anywhere in this circle. You don't have to start with a particular stage. And this learning cycle is very, very interesting for industry when we talk about it. Unusual for me to talk about this, but I'm going to talk maybe for 2 sentences or 3 on the national education policy, because it has profound kind of impacts on the learning that we are going to plan for younger people who walk into our companies and so on. It uses very interesting phraseology. It uses phraseology like multidisciplinary, which we all know about, multiple disciplines, transdisciplinary, which means outside the discipline. You can do physics and music together. Interdisciplinary, which means 2 sciences mingled with each other. The question is, this is a refreshing change, and Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the ex-chairman of ISRO, who headed the NEP's effort, has made it a very visionary statement. The question is, can we continue with the learning that the NEP promises in academic institutions? Can academic institutions make that shift from rote learning to learning which makes you think? And can we continue that as they walk into our organizations? I think we could do very well by discussing that. And the last, in terms of theories which I cherry-picked, was about a culture for learning. I think, Pooja, you mentioned it briefly about culture for learning when we were talking a little earlier in the morning. Culture for learning means how do you create a social context? If you have a very command and control kind of a culture, is it going to create an environment of a community of learning, or is it going to be very stiff upper lip? Can you learn in an environment which is very command and control? Of course, they learn in the army, which is command and control. But some cultures which are called loose, flexible loose, and not informal, unresponsible, which is talked about in her work by a person called Michelle Gelfand. Michelle Gelfand. And tight cultures where you have much more discipline and much more formal structure. Which is better for learning is a question that I'd like to leave ourselves with. Do we have informal groups? Do we have formal groups? Do we have classroom learning? Do we have experimental labs? What kind? A few slides on what we're doing in Larsen Toubro. I'm happy to say that we probably have a world record in terms of the number of development centers we've run. Development centers are typically 3-day events where we put leaders through assessment process. We now call it a development center because we think that word is non-threatening. We don't produce report cards, but we have colors to tell people where they are in terms of sharpening their competencies, how aligned with are they with business, and how good are they at digitization and so on. So 21 years back, when we introduced this, there was, of course, a pushback because it meant differentiating people. It meant, putting some people through a privileged kind of a sieve. You can't invest on development centers on the whole lot. The basic criteria is performance. And I think development centers are very powerful in leadership development. And I think L&T has somewhat got it right there. 21 years to practice it consistently is tough. And 20,000 plus is a good badge to have. The second thing that we like very much about what we're doing, and to augment this, we also have LXP, which is a recommendatory platform, is the 7 steps of learning and development, which Larsen Toubro has been religiously practicing for a number of years. Step 1 is called the Management Education Program, which is a tie-up with IIM Ahmedabad. And it's typically a 20-month program, which is extremely systematic in preparing techno-commercial managers. Of course, early in one's career, you get opportunity to at least look after a part of the project of building the world's tallest statue and, building, let's say, some of the finest freight corridors, maybe the bullet train, Metro 1 and 7, Line 1 and 7 in Mumbai, and a whole lot of, iconic projects. You get an opportunity to get in there, but with a commercial sense. The Leadership Development Program is a program which is typically about 9 months. There's a mixed bag of faculty from Ann Arbor, Michigan, a lot of Indian faculty also. It's meant for people with about 10 to 15 years of experience. Global Leadership Development Program is done with Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's when you step into a business unit role and you're now ready for heading a P&L. I must hasten to add that we are not obsessed with only P&L managers. We also have a place, a very important place for something called the Technology Leadership Program, where we bifurcate and trifurcate, career paths into those who want to grow in technology. Transforming L&T into global corporation is the next level of program. So you can't skip a level and go to the next level. That's very, very regimented in terms of the discipline with which we put people through these programs. It's done with an organization called INSEAD. It's an expensive program, and it's meant for people who are on the threshold of heading, let's say, a P&L of 3,000 crores, 4,000 crores, and are going to become now independent company heads. The Global CEO program is where we get 2 Harvard professors. You must have heard of them, Das Narayan Das and Krishna Palepu. They do an intense 7-8 days crunching of cases and so on. The people are cherry-picked for this program. And the program is very popular because it's meant for people who are about to become chief executives, not chief executive officer. We have only one. Chief executive means heading a big business, heading an independent company, and so on. Step 6 is when we send people out of the country to places like London Business School. They are extended programs for more than 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And step 7 is when our chairman and managing director when our chairman and the managing director, the two separate positions, our group chairman is Mr. A.M. Nayak and managing director is S.N. Subramaniam, personally mentor future directors. This is a very serious business. We do it over a period of 6 months to 1 year, and it's done with religious, monotonous regularity. You can't skip it anytime. So this is something that has worked a little bit for a company which is, I think, pretty blue chip. We've added a lot of value in terms of shareholder value for those of you who enjoy having L&T shares. Little bit on e-learning. L&T has moved from LMS to LXP, which is a recommendatory platform. Recommendatory platform is typically populated with content from including Coursera, Skillsoft, and so on. As you know, in India, the e-learning space is dominated more by companies which have added content and offerings up to K-12, which is class 12. But there are some which are named here, which have done lots of good work beyond K-12, and we leverage them. So we augment our 7 steps of learning with a blended e-learning approach in L&T, and that is working extremely well. A recommendatory platform is basically because just like when you type in Amazon a particular product for the next, say, 15, 20 days, it'll tell you that, we recommend that you also look at this for buying or comparing and so on. Similarly, content is suggested for you to go through, whether it is depending on your learning style, whether it's YouTube or whether it is case studies which you read through PPTs or whatever it is. So I'd say that the blended learning approach has worked for us. E-learning has worked a lot during the pandemic. We had very, very busy days with respect to consumption of the inputs that were given. And I'm happy to say that the group has a very powerful learning culture. So that's about a little bit about what we do in L&T. But I'll just wind up there by saying a little bit about what is happening in e-learning platforms. I happened to speak to a number of CEOs of edutech companies just to learn more because I was quite a greenhorn in terms of e-learning. One is bite-sized learning. Everybody talks about smaller attention spans. By the way, it has nothing to do with demography. Even I have a small attention span when it comes to something that's not absorbing. Second is content. Unless it's extremely engaging, it makes you wander. Therefore, content writers and those who design the content so that it's engaging is extremely important. The third is that unfortunately, courses are not very often completed. This is very interesting. Maybe the learning is good, looking at what Zygarnik said. But they don't complete the course very often, and therefore some companies believe in giving learning badges and stuff to motivate people. Also, I think in e-learning, the problem is that relating to a big class I was teaching a class of more than 100 people, and I wondered, because I was supposed to mark people on class participation. How do you mark them on class participation when there's such a large group? So that's a bit of a challenge. Having said that, there are some who take to e-learning like a duck to water. I like e-learning even in things like photography. I get stuck sometimes with my Nikon D500, which is a bit of an outdated camera now. So if I want to look at what is white balance, I look at a YouTube, and I can stop it without being called dumb as often as possible. And it's sort of, you ingest whatever is there. So starting with a problem is a good way for learning and development. Unfortunately, in the IT sector, particularly in the junior levels, because of this churn, there is very heavy emphasis on domain-led training, which is stuff like Python and C++ and Java and stuff. Have I finished my 20 minutes? And therefore, I will now open it up for the roundtable to delve on some of these thoughts. And thank you very much for listening. I'll come in whenever you want me to.
Thank you so much, Yogi, for sharing those wonderful insights around learning theories. It is remarkable how you share that people learn so effortlessly sometimes because of what their job demands. And the new education policy is, of course, a big shift for us as we move from rote method learning to experiential learning. And culture for learning is in our hands, whether it should be command and control or easygoing, it's in our hands. And thank you also, we really appreciate you sharing L&T's learning framework. Now I'd request Raghav to share with us how learning enables business transformation. And today we are going to talk a lot about business transformation. So this is going to be extremely essential for a roundtable discussion.
Hi, good morning again. It was lovely to meet some of you over tea and coffee earlier outside. Maybe I can come here. I'm just trying to avoid the glare. And wonderful to hear you as well, Yogi. Like you said at the start, lots of insights, and you raised some wonderful questions as well. I'm hoping to add to a little bit of insights and also hoping to raise more questions and answers. Hopefully some of this might be relevant and interesting. So we'll talk a little bit about talent at the center of business transformation, and it's a little bit about reaching to the core because I'm not an HR professional, but I do understand business a little bit as the MD of Coursera in Asia Pacific. And I want to put up a slide which I think many of you would have seen, right? Goldman Sachs CEO saying we are a tech firm first and a financial services company later. And I've seen this with many folks in India. For some companies, this is relevant, and for some companies, this is not relevant, right? I don't know if you're a hotel company, if this is relevant at all, or if you're a testing company, how relevant this is or this is not. But if you are a financial services company, I'm guessing this is relevant. If you are a telco, this is relevant. But quickly, if I can ask you, show of hands, does this resonate at all? Is your company thinking increasingly like a technology company or not so much? I mean, some companies, Birlasoft, I'm guessing, is a technology company, so this point is a little bit more for your company as well, right? So some of you are seeing that many companies are starting to say that, look, this is what is happening, right? And I was with the CHRO of a bank about 6 months ago, and she said something very similar, right? That this was said 5 years ago, but increasingly we're thinking about ourselves as a technology company. And then I was with the CHRO of a steel company, and even he said we are a technology company first, which might have been a little bit of a stretch, but increasingly many companies are thinking like technology companies. And technology, of course, here is a little bit more digital computer technology as opposed to just traditional, technology per se.
So I present GlobalLogic. We got acquired by Hitachi last year. And there was this article on the day of the acquisition in the Wall Street Journal saying, remember Hitachi, it's a software company now. What you were just saying is so true.
Yeah.
So I think, sorry.
Please.
We are looking at technology from a very myopic view.
Yeah.
We talk about technology from a digital IT and all that stuff. But if you include science,
yeah,
then no company, no industry is away from science.
Yeah.
And so how you use that science and how do you apply that to the business is the bread and butter for all.
Great point, right?
So I think that's.
And I think the other difference that we are possibly seeing, if I expand on that, right, is IT used to be a department earlier. And IT is not a department, it is the business now, irrespective of whether it is digital or technology or, like you said, science as well, right? And I think that's a little bit of the underlying element here.
If I may add,
please.
In fact, you mentioned that we are a testing and certification company, that we are. But interestingly, I did raise my hand when you made that point, because even though we have laboratories and we do audits and such a process-oriented standards company, there is a lot of data that gets generated. And today, as an organization, look at the mountains of data that we can actually do predictive analysis to already tell a turnkey project how they're going to perform on various parameters. So in a way, I echo the sentiment that was going around that I don't think any company is today not a technology company, or in some amount, in some way, a data-based organization.
So we're saying two things, right? We're saying, look, firstly, technology is not IT. That's what you said, right? It is sciences, it is broader technology, it is manufacturing technology, and so on. And the second thing that we're saying is that technology is not a department anymore, but it is the business, right? That's, I think, the way we are reading this.
Yeah, just to kind of add, in the last 2 years, what COVID and this pandemic has taught us, among many other things, is that you can't escape from being a technology or introducing or digitizing your business. Even the local grocery shops, which had got nothing to do with technology, are right now figuring out how can we digitize our business to kind of ensure that if something similar happens in future.
And ONDC is coming, right? So even for a grocery shop, technology is becoming very, very relevant.
Raghav, just one
Please.
Just to add a little bit of HR flavor over here. So one of the leading e-commerce MNCs has renamed the HR function as People Experience and Technology function a year back. So, that in itself emphasizes the
wonderful comments, right?
But this is also, and maybe, I'm being a negative guy, that way, but I think this is also a flavor of the day.
Yeah.
So 20 years, 30 years ago, everybody used to say, look, business is all about finance,
Yeah.
And it's about numbers, we are here to make money and that's about it. And then about 20 years ago, we started talking about business is all about people, it's HR, importance, people, we are all in the business of, human. And now obviously technology is the word. So everybody wants to, kuch na kuch ke ghusare technology, so we are trying to fit technology in somewhere.
Yeah.
It's also because we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
COVID brought us to our knees.
Right.
Yeah.
I can tell you, another 10 years, another decade from now, 10, 15 years, there's something else which is going to come up, and we'll say, okay, now business is all about this. So it is, let us ride over it.
Yeah.
Let's go through it. I think it's going to
So
be a journey.
all of you come, sorry, I'll let you finish. Go ahead, Abhinav. Yeah.
So I was just trying to make it a positive one. So when you said, Sandeep, that, say 30 years back it was finances, and then 20 years back it was people, now it is, digital. So we have not left any of those things.
Absolutely.
We are trying to build on to it
Absolutely.
to make and ensure that how are we meeting those finances that still remain the core. Human resources still, that remains the core.
I'm totally with you.
And
Absolutely.
technology is further to build on to ensure that the business keeps running. And
So let's
we
do
are
one
able
thing.
to-
Let's do one thing to
Totally.
move the conversation forward. And Sandeep, I'll come back to you. Now, all of you represent different industries, right? This is a room with different industries. There's manufacturing, there's technology, there's services, Mercer, auto, and so on and so forth.
Just an observation.
Please.
Sorry. Whenever there's a tectonic shift, whether it's the invention of the steam engine, or whether there's the invention of electricity, or when there's the invention of the printing press, they talked about technology. So I agree with lots of voices here. Just because there is a huge shift which has happened in terms of a pattern of thinking, behavior, acting, it is termed as technology. It could be very well termed as anything else.
Yeah. And because this is the fourth industrial revolution, which is about the internet and computer technology, the focus, like we're all saying, is a little bit around that, right? Now, all of you represent different industries. And if we unpack this a little bit, double click on this a little bit, right? I was looking at what we are seeing with many of the business leaders that we speak to, right? So if you're a bank, if you're a financial services company, you better have a digital first strategy, right? Chances that you will be a successful bank or a financial services company are low if you don't have a digital first strategy. But it does not mean that you don't have a physical strategy as well, because there are many people who will still come to branches who will need the physical capability as well. And we're also seeing if you're in the manufacturing space, right? And I wonder how it's happening at Hero now, but the amount of automation, even at L&T, I would imagine, Mr. Shriram, the amount of automation that is coming in, right? IoT applications, sensors, RPA, and so on, is mind-boggling, right? I don't need to say this, but businesses are paying heavily for these skills, right? And reality is many of your businesses are not as sexy as Google, Paytm, Swiggy, Coursera, and right? Many of your industries are a little traditional. So how do you attract this tech skill where this kid from IIT Delhi could go outside India, could come within India, and could demand 40 lakhs while you're wanting to pay 5 lakhs, right? How does that happen? And this statistic, I think, and this is in fact our report, that there are hikes of 60 to 120% happening. It's just a little crazy. Hybrid, we're all struggling with, right? What is hybrid going to be? Maybe not so much in hospitality, all of you need to be back at work, but for many of us, moonlighting is a reality. We were talking about this a little bit, right? And will it become official? Will it become the norm? We need to talk about that. And whether we like it or not, the reality is the talent gap is widening. Many companies are actually very, very actively talking about this, right? Now, I wonder, given that you represent many of these industries, does some of this resonate? Are you seeing this in your companies as well?
We are represented because we are actually a project management company.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What we do is we use drones for surveying terrain.
Yeah.
Thank you. We do things like using Google Glass for training people on safety training. We print homes, 3D printing. So it's a little different from just conventional manufacturing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think,
Any others?
one important point on the Industry 4.0 and IoT, I think we have experience in much better way. We have put up a plant in Bhopal with 100,000 truck capacity, and my productivity has increased by threefold as compared to my conventional plant in other location. I think this is the one key thing which is going to happen. And then the smart manufacturing, the attracting the new talent for the smart manufacturing would be the key, one of the key things that we should attract and retain those talent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure later, one of the questions many of us will want to ask you, right, is do you think there's ever going to be a world where self-driving will happen in India, which is an interesting topic, right? But some of this resonate. It is not comprehensive. Yeah, please go ahead, Neha.
Absolutely, and 100%. And for us as an organization, we're a financial services industry, right? It's a double whammy. You're also impacted by business challenges given the macroeconomic factors. You have the geopolitical situation anyway, the looming recession in many parts of the world. And to add to that, the technology advancements that we're looking at to enhance customer experience. So it's actually a combination of all of these that we're currently grappling with. And how do we leverage technology to address some of our business challenges, enhancing customer experience so that you don't lose your market share, becomes even more predominant now more than ever.
And what you're also saying, I think, as I'm reading between the lines, is competition is not just from within your industry, right? I was in Kuala Lumpur the other day, and CHRO of a big bank was saying, look, my competition is Grab, right? And I was like, why is Grab your competition? Of course, they have payments, but it's a big competition for talent, right? This tech talent that you might need, they want to go and work with Grab, they want to go and work with Paytm, maybe they want to before they come to your company. So how's that happening? Yeah.
Maybe you've captured it in one of the pointers there, but the generational mix is changing, right? You have more and more younger workforce which is entering into our companies now, like the mid-90s born, the late, even early 2000s now. So where the expectations are very different from what the previous generations have gone through. And I would say I don't know if we are very, very well prepared to meet what they want. We've not decoded. There's a lot of literature, but I don't think we've decoded what they are really looking for in life. And that is contributing to a lot of these challenges today.
Yeah, and I think maybe, Pooja, if we can, that's a great topic for a conversation. I'd love to learn as well. We have a lot of young people in our company. I'm turning 50 in a week's time, so I'm like, I need to understand a little bit more of what is happening for sure.
Yes, we'll build up on that.
Take a leap from Rajesh's point. It's a very interesting mix of workforce, and to your point as well, Raghav, it's a very interesting mix of workforce that we're talking about. It's not just the newer generation. We still have Gen X, we have the millennials, and we have the Gen Zs. So it spreads across all of these generations. And a very interesting stats, we were actually preparing for a global leadership visit. And when we actually looked into our own data, we realized almost 95% of our population comprises millennials and Gen Zs. So that's the kind of workforce that we're working with. It's in the higher 90s. Yeah.
Just to add here, Neha, to your point, even though your workforce is diversified, right, coming from millennial or Gen Z, look at the technology meaning for them.
True, yeah.
It's different.
It's different.
What we have learned, what we have experienced, what we have already worked upon is completely different from what they are learning today or what they are going to learn tomorrow.
I think the Gen Z topic is going to be quite conversational, but I think we should go back to the presentation now.
Okay, so this is our context, right? It's an interesting context. And given the topic that we have today, which is how do you build this talent for your businesses, what I'll do is try and bring some insights of what are the answers that we know so far. We don't know all answers. and what are the open questions that we have. Let's look at that a little bit, and hopefully it'll be.
One question, if I may ask, so these are challenges that we have, these are disruptors that we have. Do you think, in your wisdom, that many of these will get set right over a period of time because of the ecosystem will take care of it? And the reason why I'm saying, for example, point number 3, which is business are paying heavily for tech skills. Look, because there is a shortage today, and you talk about IITs and all that, getting those people in, it's going to charge, they're going to cost us 60 to 120% every year salary hike. But because the pool is very limited. But as we continue to expand and continue to believe, people start believing that IT is a great place to, or technology is a great career to have, the number would swell. So the supply is going to be much higher. And we have seen that, again, going back to my example of, finance and HR, there was a dearth of finance talent, let's say about 30 years ago, but then hordes of CAs, in my generation, everybody wanted to become a CA. Who wanted to do HR, only me and Yogi, maybe, But then after some time, everybody wants to become HR, so there's a huge supply. Now there's going to be similar. So the point is, the ecosystem will also balance some of those things out over a period of time because people will start navigating towards it.
I think it's a great question. At least what we are seeing is not enough is happening right now. There is not enough narrowing of the gap. And let me just give you 2 quick data points in just one industry, right? NASSCOM is saying we export $250 billion of software from India. We will become $1 billion in 2-3 years' time. That's the pace at which NASSCOM is saying. Sorry, $1 trillion in 3-4 years' time. There are 5 million people who broadly work in the IT sector in India. Are we on track to make 15 million people in this sector? We are not. What is happening is in Noida, there's a university that I know well. They used to have 20,000 students capacity. 5,000 were computer science, 15,000 were mechanical, civil, etc., etc. I'm a mechanical engineer, right? They changed it to 18,000 computer science students, 2,000 mechanical, civil, electrical. So that change happened. And all the 18,000 seats are full because kids want to come and study computer science, right? But at a macro level, are we going from 5 million people to 15 million people who are not just in tech companies, who are not just in Deepak's company, they are in many companies who need technology skills, but that pace is not happening.
And I think you raise a good point. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is because we are still struggling with the same pool. So 20,000, may say it has become 5,015, now it has become 18 and 2, whereas those 2 are extremely important, so mechanical and electrical and all that, because basic.
Yeah.
See, IT will be enabler.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way, you still need people who are going to be doing project management and mechanical and electrical and civil and all that stuff. Uska pool kam kar denge, other will become big. So,
But Deepak, Sandeep, what is happening is the number of new jobs getting created for mechanical, civil, electrical is much lesser. It is in the 5, 6, 7%. The jobs being created for computer science, data science is in the 100% levels. That is why the shift is happening.
Sandeep's point, I think possibly it's a phenomena. It's a time-bound phenomena till the demand and supply equalizes, because what in effect we will need will be. It's not that computer grads are the only folks we will need in life, right? There will be many others we will need.
Yeah.
And if you look at the industry trends, more and more companies today want people who are skilled in their domain and their industry.
Yeah.
To talk the same language that, say, the client wants, right? So maybe it's a phenomena. It's maybe it'll take a couple of years to get the demand and supply equalized, and then we will see where the industry is truly headed.
Yeah.
Right.
There are 2 points. Sorry for coming in there. One, will technology really, will we bridge the gap? Because today we're using tech with a very broad brush. But tech in itself, the skills are very quickly getting outdated. So even if a student with a curriculum is coming very relevant in the workforce today, within 3 years, and that's where these buzzwords of reskilling become very critical and more than just buzzwords, because that's a reality.
But Smriti, the point is that our education system is not a selection, it's an elimination. So people who have gone through you ask them, my son did an engineering course, I asked him to, by the way, it's a normal problem with every father. Ask him to fix a bulb, he won't be able to do that. And he says, I've not done electrical engineering. But that's a standard answer that you'll get. Point is that they know nothing about engineering. All they know is that, there's a elimination process happened. These are better than others. And then when people like Yogi and, Infosys and Krish Shankar and all that, they'll hire those people and retrain them.
Correct.
Because they have the basic
And which
intelligence.
is what Mr. Sriram's point was also on the education policy. And, it's very good to hear and what is on paper and conceptually what we're looking at. But how much of it is going to translate in education?
I'm so sorry, all of you. I think
No,
I
it's a
just
good
request
conversation,
you.
Pooja.
No.
But let's do one thing. Let's do one thing, right? So let's talk about what we can control ourselves, right? Because kids coming from college, you cannot control. You can, to some extent, you can go and speak to universities and say, "Bhai, ye karo, wo karo," and all of that, right? And some of you, I'm sure, engage with campuses.
There's an important point
But,
here.
but
There's
let's
an
talk about
important-
what you can control.
There's an important point that Smriti raised about the NEP. If it is going to really unfold the way it's meant to. You talked about mechanical engineering, civil engineering, and so on. Maybe in 5 years' time, when you go to the campus, these terms may not exist. There'll be blended things like mechatronics.
Yeah, very true.
And I don't know whether industry, while of course there's always an accusation that academia has been behind the progress of what industry wishes to make in terms of talent, I don't know whether industry is going to be in step with what academia has to offer if we can make that quantum shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
The last point is what Neha said. I'm just cherry picking about the diversity. One of the points that your slide probably could include is the huge diversity in terms of demography, in terms of all kinds of, for example, you take gig workers. There's no master-servant relationship for a gig worker. You take people who are FTCs, the new wage code and the new labor code talks about the fact that you can hire FTCs. Then the complexion of permanent workers is also changing. So that itself is a hybrid nature of workforce, which is worth debating.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I think one of the points that we've said, and Sandeep, you raised it as well, right, is there needs to be change at an educational level. Yogi spoke about it and NEP as well, right? Now, I know, for example, business education is changing. Yogi spoke about L&T sending people to INSEAD, right? I did my MBA from INSEAD as well. And I was talking to the dean and I said, what is the biggest change that you think will happen in business education? And he said there will be hybridization of business and technology. Because today I don't need managers coming out who only are managers, but they will be managing technology for the next 20 years as far as we know. So there is that hybridization which is happening. So there's a lot that needs to happen on campuses, but let's come back to what we can control, right? What we can control in your organizations. And let's start with the good news a little bit, right? Which is my next slide, which I think hopefully some of you will like. What we did was there are thousands of companies who train their folks on Coursera. And we said, look, if you measure business skill, and the font might not be visible from the backside, but if you measure business skill on the x-axis, and if you measure business performance on the y-axis, you would imagine there is correlation. Companies with better skilled people should be doing better. There are many ways to look at company performance. One of them is stock performance. And so we put stock performance on the y-axis, we put skill proficiency on the x-axis. It is not a super strong correlation, but it is a decently strong correlation. So
but
obvious
Raghav,
factor.
there's one point about vocational skills.
Yeah.
If there's a wish list of what edutech companies can do, please do think about how you can include vocational skills also. I see evidence of vocational skills being imparted as very scarce as compared to the behavioral, domain-based, etc. Unless, of course, I'm wrong.
And by vocational, you're thinking the blue collar and white collar entry level.
I don't want to categorize them as by their collars.
Yeah.
But I just want to say that a practical way of, let's say, repairing a two-wheeler, which can be done through a hybrid mode of doing the course as well as having the actual physical scooter there or whatever, is what I mean by vocational skills.
Makes sense.
And many others. I mean, if you take NSDC, they have something like 36 skill centers.
Yeah.
So one can pick up any of those. Now, you may not learn swimming through a manual. That's difficult.
Yeah.
But one can, of course, pick up a lot through e-learning about how you can approach a physical object or how you approach an apparatus and how you use it.
Yeah. No, good point. That's a good point. So this is the good slide, right? The good news slide. The other thing that we looked at, because we have the benefit of data, there are millions of people who come to Coursera, and we said, look, what are the top 10 skills people learn? Let's just look at the top 10. There are thousands of skills one can learn. And did it change during the pandemic? You spoke about leadership skills as well, right? So did something change during the pandemic? This is globally, including India, what people would learn. 100 million people coming to Coursera pre-pandemic, right? Pre-pandemic. Why are we talking about technology so much? Because all sorts of people were coming and learning Python, neural networks, algorithms, strategy, writing, supply chain, cloud computing, and so on. Communication. So as a part of communication, how do you write? Right. But in the pandemic, this changed a little bit, right? This changed to writing, strategy, Python programming. But surprise, surprise, mindfulness, meditation, gratitude, kindness, listening, learning, etc., right? So all of us realized, not just a few people, but millions of people, that along with hard technology skills, functional skills, and please keep in mind, this is only the top 10, right? So if I go a little bit deeper, there will be a lot more, manufacturing, supply chain, physics, chemistry, all of that. But the fact that all of these could be thought about as skills around working with people, skills around self-management, became extremely evident to all of us, right? And so the question that this asks all of us is, what will the future look like, right? What do we need in the next 3 years or so? And we don't have the answer, so we looked at the World Economic Forum, and the World Economic Forum combines these a little bit, right? It says, look, you need thinking and innovation, you need problem solving, you need critical thinking, you need leadership, but you also need technology, you also need technology design, and so on and so forth.
I think in roundtables like this...
Let me just quickly complete this point. So while it's completely, stupid to be trying to predict the future, but one thing that we might be able to take away from all of this is the future is likely to be a combination of digital and human skills. That much we can possibly confidently say, that it seems like, depending on your role, maybe it's more in Birlasoft, maybe it's a little bit lesser in Holiday Inn, you definitely do need human skills, but you may, chances are, need some form of digital skills at a very broad level. Sorry.
Yeah, may I? So I was saying that in roundtables like this, it's worth focusing on skills which are almost impossible to get right digitally. For example, I can't think of counseling ever being replaced through a digital media. I can't think of it. You can try hard, but you see a two-dimensional image which is trying to personalize the problem and stuff. So it's good for us, I think, in the roundtable to focus on 3 or 4 areas which are very human touch oriented, because this is a human resources group, and build on that.
So Raghav, just to add one point here, just out of what we did a month back, we did a survey for 2,500 employees from a learner preference perspective and a couple of key questions. And one of them was, what is the impediment for you from a performance perspective as an individual? And we thought technical will come as one of the key areas because being a technology company, but 50% of the incumbents spoke only of behavioral skills.
Okay.
Managers spoke of challenges in having conversations with their team members. Coaching came at the leadership level. A lot of elements came in career conversations and others. I mean, these were the ones which are more critical than technology. Technology was almost like 30% only.
Yeah. And maybe it represents what we've seen as well, Deepak. Maybe it is this shift. I mean, maybe if there was a survey pre-pandemic, right? Maybe it would have stood a little bit there. I don't know. That's what a broader data set is telling us. But maybe this is the shift that we've seen in the pandemic.
Just a point here, I think this is a slide, again, going back to what we have seen, and those people who have lived through HR for more than 20 years would relate to that. But time and again, we have seen something or the other happening in our lives in 5 years horizon. So 9/11 happened. People went back, and I'm sure if you do a slide at that point, and somebody may ask a slide, they will talk about the same thing, because life is more important, and blah 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 and all that. So move away from this mindfulness, meditation, gratitude. So this 9/11 happened. Then after that, there's going to be a financial crisis, the nation crisis, the financial crisis, like what we were talking about yesterday. And then there's SARS, and then there's the Middle East SARS, and then there's Ghana, then Malala. So every 3-4 years, we come up with something like this, or we have an issue which crops up, and every time, I can tell you financial services, I was there in Japan at that time, and I had gone there with G to build a business, large bank, if we want to become a bank, G Capital wanted to become a bank and all that. All that I was doing over there 2 years was asking people to go. Japan is a very, very emotional society. Everybody said, look, we don't want growth, we don't want this, we just want gratitude, we just want, security in our life and all that. But we've forgotten that. 4 years hence, 5 years hence, we just forgotten that, we come back again to the same thing. Today, pandemic happened, now we're coming back to this one. Tomorrow, something else is going to happen, then we'll come back to this one. These middle things, to my mind, are probably not going to go anywhere because we live in,
It's very event
Absolutely.
based. Very
Absolutely.
event based. But one of
Absolutely.
the things that, if I was to look at 2025, right, one of the things that I've been observing is that the hyper personalization of what a particular person of today's workforce wants to do, I think possibly the doors or eyes and ears have opened a little bit, I would say, from what we've seen in the past decade. Today, people are open to experimenting, especially the younger lot,
Yeah.
of doing lot more than just a job. And that is making things possibly more complex. Of course, technology plays a very important role in it because that's the biggest enabler for them to reach out to masses and millions of people towards what they're doing. And that's why you see newer things like stand-up comedies, etc. today being,
Yeah.
they're right at the forefront. So I think if I look at talent, that is one very big shift that I'm seeing, that the number of options that my fellow employee will have within or outside the company to do
Very
are
true.
way too many than what they were even 5 years back.
Yeah.
Would that also be an outcome? And that's a question for us to think about. Also, the fact that in 20 years, the per capita income, the kind of education, the kind of life that is being afforded to the generation that's coming into the workforce is different. And therefore, they are exploring those avenues which were never a part of the spectrum before.
And probably, Smriti, I would just add to that, it is not just the per capita income or the lifestyle, but also that sense of instant gratification. They take pleasure in doing so many things at the same time. I mean, of course, the financial impact could, of course, be an important integral element of it. But it's not just the financial gratification, though, that they're looking at, but also the idea of creating something new, the idea of getting involved in newer things and multiple things at the same time.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think
a great
it's
point. I'm going to bring us back a
Yes.
little bit
Yeah.
to our topic at hand. So, if these are some of the broad directions that we are hearing, I want to put up another slide on what we are hearing from some of your community in terms of people leaders, right? And again, just staying on the topic of talent development. And I'll just let you read this and then ask for some reactions. Okay, so Deepak, you're nodding. You agree with left and right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I see a trend. Earlier, from a learning and development, I just look at last 20 years of learning and development. I know earlier we used to be high and mighty that this is our training calendar and this is what we'll publish. But now, I mean, training calendars of the past. It's
Absolutely.
like focus on core issues, core operational issues, get training at the ground level and get it organized. So it should impact the business. Nothing else matters. Your training calendars don't matter at all.
So you're not focusing on learning hours, you're focusing on business skills and outcomes, right? That's what you're saying.
Outcomes.
It's about levels. We are
Yeah.
focusing on NPS now. Which
Okay.
At least that's what I measure. That whatever you learn, you apply your NPS score from your client should be in the range of 9 or 10 out of a scale of 10. It's gone to that level.
So for your company with your customers, what is the NPS and how does learning actually impact that NPS?
I agree.
Amazing.
I think
Amazing.
this is cutting across.
We can hear you even.
This is cutting across. I think all.
Okay.
And I think importantly, we are seeing that shift right over the years where we want more people to focus on the outcomes than just doing a check in the box saying, "Oh, I did so many hours
So
of
I hear you.
man
And Sandeep,
hours of training."
I'll come to you, but let me put one more slide, right? Because
Before you go there,
okay,
just a second,
okay.
Why are we saying that we have moved from yesterday to today? I thought maybe today was always the case. Yeah. I mean, why would we say in HR?
No.
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 I mean,
It was not the case.
Yeah,
Your
do-
L&D leaders were looking at the left.
May I,
They were
may I,
not
re-
looking at
may
the
I
right.
respond to what he's saying? I think in today's context, domain is king. While you talk about business relevant skills, and domain may be, tucked into that term of business relevant. As we go forward, my prediction is domain is going to be extremely important. And unfortunately, if we are going to flood people with content from, say, NPTEL videos and so on, which are not as engaging as they should be, which are basically, videotapes which are made with great intentions, it won't serve the purpose. So therefore, presenting the problem, making people think about how do I find a solution is the key for learning in the future, is my prediction.
I would agree, and to just add on to what was being spoken about, one of the reasons why I think, especially that yesterday today transition has happened, is because just the amount of virtual learning and content, and which is what Mr. Sriram you were saying, that has flooded. I mean, I think 5 years back, finding content was a uniqueness. Today it's content everywhere. Sifting it is
we are to blame. So we are to blame as well.
So I mean,
we had, when I joined Coursera, we had 1,000 pieces of content.
Correct.
Now we have 10,000, and we are launching to 50,000. So yes, we are to blame.
Which is why now, quality over volume is becoming a very important part.
To your point, as an IT company, I think for us, what's changing is every company is an IT company right now. Frankly,
Yeah,
I mean,
in
all of you
some
have IT departments.
Yeah.
So you have a small IT organization running in each one of your organizations. So for us to be relevant, it's the reverse. We have to get into micro verticals, into micro domains, and understand, contextualize into a particular area. If it's cards and payments, I have to look at get my people trained on cards and payments. In pharma research, I have to get people trained in pharma research for a particular client. So that's the kind of shift which is happening for us as well.
I'm going to take just 2 more slides.
Yes,
most of
I think let's finish this presentation.
Pooja, I'm just going to do 2 more slides and then I'll stop. I won't go through everything, but this is the right conversation.
Yeah.
So absolutely, this is the right conversation. So if some of you agree, not all of you, if some of you agree, right, that it needs to be domain with business specific skills, then this is the paradox a little bit, right? That your people are saying, look, if you don't give me development, I will leave. But I'm sure your L&D managers are chasing them and saying, learn. I have, ROI to show on my platform. And the other thing which I want to put up, and that will be my last slide, right, is this research that we've done actually. This is Coursera research. Many L&D leaders, HR leaders will say complete courses. That is how you will measure that actual learning has happened. We did research and people said, look, we don't care about completing courses, right? We are not in school. It is not a textbook that I have to finish. It's not a course that I have to finish. It is a skill I want to develop. And people initially start nodding on this, but when you actually get it down to behaviors, I think a lot of us are still thinking complete courses because course completion means skill development. It is a slightly nuanced shift which takes time to say, look, let me worry lesser about course completion. Let me worry more about skill development. And can the two be different? That's the first question.
So yes, I think they are very different. And because course completion is very tangible, it's very easy, it's very quick. So it's the most convenient way. But honestly, how I've completed my course, what I've retained, how much it has engaged me, how many times would I want to revisit it because content has engaged me and therefore transfers into a skill, is the actual thing. So I think we're just not moving to the yellow bar because of the difficulty.
But I think we need to be practical. I mean, earlier when I was sort of growing up in the industry, metric failed was a qualification. So are we going to say right in our CVs that, incomplete course number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and say I'm staking my claim for the job? I wonder how HR will react.
If I can just add over here.
See a strong correlation. Sorry, why don't you go ahead?
No, I was just going to say, I think it's a very pertinent point that you make, and coming from a clinical research organization where domain experience, IT, technology, all that is of course very, very relevant. But for us, the center of it all is the patient, really. So our, I would say, softer behavioral skills, all domain, whether you're front-facing or back-facing, just assume a lot of significance. And I think one of the changes that we've tried to bring exactly is the point that you're raising over here is most of our learning and development interventions for across-the-board organization actually start, do we have the opportunity for this individual to demonstrate this in a real-time scenario? So do we have that opportunity, whether it's a project or whether it's an assignment or whatever it is, and then work it back. Back to the point, we are a highly regulated industry. You've got to do a certain amount of training every year. Monotonously, you've got to do it, But beyond that, so you've got to do it. So everybody, we've got clocked hours, they're insane. But that doesn't translate into skill development per se. And that initiative or that urge to do that is the hook is, here's the opportunity, here's the assignment, here's the position or wherever you're going to be doing it. And that's what's kind of driving the needle more from the employees towards it, rather than an L&D or an HR or a domain specialist trying to thump it down. So, I mean, to me, this resonates
Very
huge.
simple point there, like Python course, right? I'm from the IT side, right? Python course complete here. If you cannot apply it to the client context and what you're working on, it's of no use.
Yeah.
So that is why the needle, at least for us, right? That is why the NPS comment saying that till I get great feedback of your work from your client, one that you're working for, basis the skills you've learned, is of no use.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
hammer karna padta hai. We're not going away from hammer, but that I think in today's world is more because we are so packed in life
Yeah.
that we have to keep sending them reminders. But our people, at least that's what I've seen with I mean, they themselves are going and learning. So SNA ki, only we are offering, right? There are people who are going, learning, taking certifications on their own and coming back to us, saying that I've done this on my own. Now I want to add this piece to my job. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Which is a very positive.
No, that's a great comment.
But then
Just
Rajesh,
to add to that point,
yeah.
I think, which is why companies these days, including us, is promoting this model of hybrid. While we will offer certain interventions, partnering with organizations like yours and others, in addition to that, we're going to offer them a certain budget for which, like he said, you can go ahead and do your courses of your choice, which you don't find it here, and we'll reimburse it for you.
Yeah.
That's
No,
how
that's
they
a great
build that
point.
skill.
That's a
And,
great point.
over there,
I'm
I
conscious
think-
I'm hijacking your time. Sandeep, a brief comment, and then I'm going to hand back to you so that you can run the rest of the plan that you have.
No, I think again, the point that I have is, look, our learning philosophy in corporate is also emanating from our education. And we have, I just am thinking my son is in grade 12, and I keep telling him, look, ye karo, wo karo, and all that stuff. At the end of it, board exams are important. Now, what happens is kids are sitting for the board exam, and what are we testing them? We are basically testing them the retention of learning.
Yeah.
Through the entire year, जो भी पढ़ा है, you should be able to retain and should be able to produce over there. We are not looking at, how is that accounting, whatever that he's learning in economics is applicable skill. So we are creating those kind of people. So once they get into corporate world, they expect that. I think things are changing. With education now changing quite a bit, with IB curriculum coming in, which is more like a practical and all that. I think we'll see a shift in this, and people will be looking at more skill-based programs than really just doing a program for the sake.
Great point. And I'll close with this, right? I think what you said, completely agree. And I think, Smithy, what you said as well, right? The reason we also do this, because it's easier to measure that course got completed, right? How do you actually measure that a skill got developed? And not just a Python skill got developed, but the role that you're getting ready for, if that is a data analyst role, right? And I think that was the point that you were making, that did you actually get skilled to become the job that you're ready for, that you're supposed to be ready for, as opposed to completing a course because we're mentally conditioned like that, or because that's easier for us to measure. How do we do that, right? So that's the question which we will talk about how to answer. But with that, I'll hand back to you, Pooja. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Raghav. What can I say? Even your first statement sparked so many ideas and thought sharing. I thought you'd be standing here for the next 2 hours. So moving on, a lot of points did get covered, along this presentation. This is what we want. We want a very conversational roundtable. I'm carrying a lot of questions for you all. So I'll be shooting out one question, and I don't want to take responses in a particular order. So, we'll just make it very conversational and take about 2 responses for each question. So, starting with business transformation, like Raghav reiterated that every organization outside of technology sector is also becoming a tech company, and he also pointed some of the major disruptors. So we know that we are all going through a major disruption. So my question is, what are your top business challenges that the C-suite is working on, and how are you playing a role in that?
I will, speak about the automotive industry and the way the, emission norms is getting changed. And it's very difficult. I think you all know whenever you go for buying your next car, it should be either EV or either, hydrogen or it's a hybrid that you need to decide. And today, most of the organization of the automotive industry, they are working on the 5 concurrent technology: CNG, PNG, EV, hydrogen, and hydrogen with IC engine. And it's a very, very relevant point that unless until we prepared for the new technology, we'll wiped out from the industry. Because the way the swing is going on towards the EV, I think by 2030, 30 to 40% market of the automobile would be EV. How we need to upgrade our channel partner, how we need to upgrade our technology partner, it's very, very important. And what we are doing, we are hiring graduate engineer from IIT, most of the IITs, and from MTech, from most of the IITs, and we are sending them in Sweden, Volvo, and we are putting them for a 1 year on-the-job training to learn the emission norms, battery management, and uh, electromobility. And they come back to India, and then they add value in our R&D sector. So this is one of the major challenge for auto industry is facing. And if you see in NCR, I cannot sell anything on the diesel truck. I have to sell all CNG. And next time, I think government will push for the EV. When recently we are approaching IKEA. IKEA is one of the Swedish brand for all furniture, well, and we are trying to sell the truck. They put only one condition: we need EV trucks in India. Either you prepare or we'll approach to Volvo Sweden. So this is a new shift which is going on, and it will impact all of us. I think it's a good thing that our emissions will improve. And if I talk about when we implemented BS6, what is the difference between BS6 and BS4? Ambient air of BS6 much more cleaner than the ambient air of Delhi. It's I think air quality level is less than 50, and in Delhi it is always it is more than 300 or 400.
Yeah.
So this is the shift which is going to happen, and I think IV or hydrogen with IC engine will bring lot many changes.
Interesting. Abhinav, would you like to share a point on what is the C-suite's agenda at this point of time because of the business transformation going on?
Yeah, absolutely. Anirban.
Oh, sorry. Anirban.
No worries. So I think, one of the key factors that has impacted, and I think we are hearing around the room as well, is basically making sure that we have the right people in the right jobs. So I think retention of knowledge, retention of talent, and just winning the talent war, as we are seeing playing out in all of our regional markets, is definitely one of the key sort of considerations, top of the mind kind of topics for the C-suite. With that, also comes the other challenge of with the changing shift in the industry, and especially because firms like Mercer, we are catering to a wide range of clients from different industries. I think it probably touches all of the industries that is represented in this room today. How do we really then also make sure that we have the talent moving in pace with the change and the shift that is happening in the industry to cater to clients better? How do we really, as we were saying, upskill them? How do we really make sure that we have that critical thinking mindset, which is more focused on delivering quality and service to the clients, right? So I think these are definitely some critical sort of issues or challenges, I'd say, that we are sort of having to deal with. Now, coming to the transformation bit, I think what we are seeing is also trying out different ways. How do we do it, right? So in terms of course, attraction, development and retaining of talent, there are different sort of models that we are applying and trying out. It's almost like a test and learn kind of situation, given the dynamism of the market. But having said that, I think especially from a value proposition standpoint for the people, we want to join Mercer to, sort of work for the clients. We are investing in robust systems just to create that whole experience, starting from the time that a candidate is first contacted to the time they are, offered, onboarded, to the time they are, sort of trained or assimilated, and then of course as they move into, client servicing. So I think it's a whole sort of life cycle in itself. Like we were talking about client experience, I think it's also important to build that colleague experience and bring it into the picture in that sense. And from there on, of course, from a colleague life cycle standpoint, of course, how do we really provide the ecosystem, right? So Raghav made relevant points, and I think we are seeing that shift even within consulting firms like ours, where we are moving to different hybrid models because we are again working with a multi-generational workforce, right? It's a global organization, so there are different regions, different nuances that's in the picture as well. So how do we really, take all of that together and sort of, bring it to bear, as they say? So I think in the recent times, our firm has heavily invested in digital learning, to some of the examples that Raghav was sharing and we were hearing around the room. The effort is that we also, along with that, have a mind shift change from the whole point of running some metrics as to how many people did how many hours to, what's the impact and what is the outcome in terms of, let's say, client NPS or what you will, that those programs are having. And how do we really make it more organic for a person getting into some of those learning opportunities to sort of make sure they complete their journeys, right? And this could not just be limited to technical skill sets or domain skill sets, but also the fact in terms of how are we developing our leadership, how are we developing the specialized skills, and so on and so forth.
Interesting, Anirban. Thank you. So just building on that, you want to share a point?
Absolutely. So post-COVID, the way we operate business is entirely different, right? So we are about to start the campus recruitment drive, and our source market is all the hotel management colleges. And I was speaking to the college principals and all, and they were mentioning that this year, the number of students that has come into these colleges have dropped down to approximately 60%. That means 40% of the seats are vacant in hotel management colleges for post-graduation from graduation colleges all across. And subsequently, from the students that are passing out, almost 50% of the students are picking up other industries, be it retail, be it other industries, finance, other industries. But for sure, people are not coming into hospitality and hotels. So that brings us into a very interesting point that, okay, now where should we go for sourcing talent? And on that particular segment, what we thought of is that, why don't we go into tier 2, tier 3 cities? And go into the colleges, we provide the vocational courses. 6 months, 1 year, 2-year courses. And from there you get the students. And then subsequently look at bite-sized learning videos or some online training platforms, create some for ourselves and skill these people. Because otherwise it's becoming very difficult for us to sustain business.
Interesting.
Everybody is saying that, technology, but for us, technology is enabler. Right? For us, the way you prepare mojito, only a bartender can prepare a mojito. You can't have a automatic, robot preparing a mojito and coming across onto you.
Thank God.
So, but that day is not far. Yeah, that day is not far. So I understand that one of the big agenda or challenge that C-suite is facing is talent gaps. As Anirban mentioned, and as you also reiterated, Kunal. So I want to build on that, and I'll say war for talent is intensifying, outlining an increasingly competitive landscape for finding and retaining talented workers. The rapidly changing nature of work and the workplace and talent strategies are adding up to the overall complexity of the problem. And to it, the disruptions of the past have made the job framework too rigid. How do you see the skill challenges panning out in the current work order, and how do you summarize the current situation at your organization?
I just try to start here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a larger context in IT. A report last month was showcasing the fact that we have almost 7 lakh openings across the IT sector. And the supply is equally there, but the supply doesn't have the right currency of skill sets. Skill set I would look at it as currency because that's what is selling in the market right now. And when I see it, there are a couple of challenges which are coming in. One, every single company is fighting for talent. And the key cost element which is impacting every single company is manpower cost. Because that's what is actually bringing the whole I mean, if you were to look at, there's a financial pressure at any company because of this. And if you look at last month, most of the top IT companies clearly highlighted the fact that they're reducing some of the VPIs and others because of this very reason. So what is happening right now is just that there are people, but there is no skill. Skill is a problem everywhere. And that is what is causing a major problem. And in any organization right now, with the kind of pressures on resourcing and attrition that is almost shooting more than 30-35%, the challenge has been to look at how do I get the right skills in my organization. And that's what the problem that our business leadership is coming back with. And for us, it's not about, the pressure on learning is much more than what we had earlier. In terms of not just being able to skill people or just do regular trainings or others, but it's more to do with how can we augment the talent acquisition through certain amount of bench skilling or skilling, the buzzwords are cross-skilling, reskilling, upskilling. And now that's what is coming as a clear focus area. So for us, it's no longer learning metrics, it's more of getting people into billable roles, which is the metrics. Getting more and more people really working in client requirements is a critical component. And that is what we are focused upon at this point.
I have to ask you a follow-up question. Does it mean that the HR role is getting excessively skewed towards talent acquisition in IT companies, which leaves you with very little time for development and so on? That's question one. And question two is a follow-up, Deepak, right?
Yeah.
You said something very interesting little while earlier, about how HR should almost become curators of content and figure out what is the content that is required for people. Do you see the future as also a definite competency with HR people about how to curate content?
I wouldn't look at it from that perspective because there are enablers for that. There are platforms like you said, LXPs and others. There are a lot of these kind of components coming in. There's a lot of technology solutions which are coming in to look at from where you stand to what gaps you have, how can you create using AML, create learning journeys, and all that is there. So curation now is become more personalized, hyper-personalized. These are the words being used. But the pressure on HR is now to look at increasing the employee value proposition, more engagement. The employee experience is what everyone is talking about. So enhancing the employee experience to increase retention. How can you make individuals have a sense of belonging to the organization? I think those are the issues which the HR is trying to deal with at this point. It's trying to get more people involved, more employees involved within the organization.
So Yogi, if I may ask, what you just started, especially just to answer your question and just to try answering what you have also highlighted. So clearly, I think the problem is pertinent. I think what she has stated is what all organizations are experiencing. One, there is clearly a dearth of talent. Secondly, the talent which we are able to attract and retain, we are somewhere not very satisfied with the skill, ability, capability level of them as well. Now, I think to answer the question which you asked, can HR in future become the curator of some content? I think they already have begun doing that. If I could kind of reflect back to my earlier organization, which was Accenture, and almost 16 years ago, we introduced a program to be able to attract the HR talent through something called as an Accenture XLRI HR Academy, wherein we partnered with XLRI. We kind of worked with those professors. We told them that we are, let's say, an IT consulting BPO organization. While your module, let's say on law, teaches so many things modules, we would want you to crispen this to kind of cover these aspects, which will be relevant for the pool of people who we will hire, induct. We will make them work as interns with us for 2 years. At the end of it, we are going to offer them a certification from your institute, and we will kind of absorb them, grow them in our organization. So I think I see more and more such programs. And then we had this hit program by ICICI, which was launched a couple of years ago. We as an organization are thinking of something similar on those lines. So I think we will need to kind of look at innovating the way we are attracting talent from campuses. Because honestly speaking, we in a race to hire from campuses are like, ye company itne paise de rahi, so I'll also have to pay this much. But somewhere when people are getting on board, we are somewhere kind of cribbing that we are paying them so much from our nose, and they just don't know anything. We have to invest 3-5 months in kind of teaching them. So yeah.
Yeah.
Learning is any longer or upskilling any longer is a HR job. I mean, I'm coming purely from my learning experience. Anything and everything that we're doing, it's absolutely hands in glove with what the business really is wanting to do. So, from academies to anything that we've put in place today, it's all about what that manager on the ground needs from this employee of mine. So it's always about either getting them upskilled to the client context or the global logic context, whatever be the case. But it's no longer an L&D mandate now saying, oh, it's only these 50 people in L&D that are going to do this. It's not happening like that. It's like, how can you mobilize your entire business organization to partner with you so deep that you are pretty much getting your people ready on an everyday basis, not even a week, everyday basis, to meet the challenges of skill gaps.
Yeah. I think a very pertinent word, we haven't spoken it yet, but I can see that thread running through this whole skilling conversation and talent acquisition and deficit is workforce planning. I think today it's so integral. And that's where, Mr. Sriram, you talked about, is talent acquisition becoming the mainstay, or is learning or learning going into upskilling, reskilling numbers. So ultimately, it's about planning. You have to plan what is happening, where are your customers coming from, what are those skill sets, and then go back on the drawing page to say, how much do I acquire? Do I go to campuses? And reskilling and upskilling.
My point is only while you are managing the pyramid, you're managing the materialization, you're managing the bench, you're breathless with dealing with this 25% churn. He talked about billable recruitment also being a part of the HR person's job. With all this, where is the time for development? I mean, I would think you got to be Superwoman, Spider-Man, everything together to do that. Also.
Yeah, so
I think we are. So
I guess the onus lies in the employee to learn, and that's why they say future of work is learning. So it's a very, very popular mantra right now that what is future of work? Future of work is learning. So carrying on, I'd like to say that the shelf life of skills is really going down. And World Economic Forum says the total number of skills required for a single job is increasing 6% annually. And like some of you already have mentioned, that the talent that's coming on board is some way lacks some of these, holistic skills, so as to say. So my question to you is that what is your strategy on building job-relevant internal talent pipeline that will stay relevant even in future roles?
So I can maybe add a comment there. What we have experienced at Mercer, and especially within our operations and technology divisions, so there is technology in the name itself, as we were talking earlier, is an academy model. So, of course, there are diverse skill sets that we are hiring at any point in time. Some are more generalist in nature, but there are also specialized skills, which could be tech or semi-tech, which could be, skills like actuarial, that we hire. So I think that academy model has worked out well for our firm, and then even in scaling up our businesses in different regions. The idea is, of course, we hire people with some basic skill and knowledge sets. So there could be a qualification, which may be required, let's say math, economics. And then we, invest in the people. So, I heard an example earlier in the room where, you would probably allow the colleagues to go ahead, acquire some skills. I think you were saying that, Ashish, earlier, right? And we reimburse for them. And then the second part is there are, of course, technical experts that we have built over the years. So how do we really then involve them into the whole process of building skills in the newer workforce? So not just a core L&D job, but we would then have some investment coming in from the business through their technical experts in building those capabilities and skills in-house. And that's the academy model I'm referring to, which may not be readily available off the shelf in the market if you're going, let's say, to college campuses to hire. Of course, experience roles is a different, ball game altogether, but that's what has worked for us.
Yeah, I'd
think,
request
just,
Ruchi to say something because she's not spoken anything.
Thanks, Pooja. So, coming from a service sector organization, we invest in our human capital by a lot of interventions that all of us just mentioned. We follow a blended learning approach, invest in the digital learning piece for our employees. But in addition to that, something new that we've started doing is, relooking at if we can give them an opportunity to reimagine their careers. So, what we have done is that across different levels in our company, we have identified certain set of employees whose current skill set definitely we evaluate. And we also look, what is the aspired position where this person wants to go to. And then we give them an opportunity to move in either vertically or horizontally. That's basically, putting them in a scoped role, giving them an opportunity to learn on the job. That's where we are heavily focusing on. Because when a particular project or your role demands, that's the best kind of learning that comes. And then we supplement it with a learning assistance program wherein we reimburse their learning expenses, as Ashishu mentioned, and a blended learning approach, digital learning to facilitate the same. Also, we have a very interesting, concept of beat tells, wherein we, foster a lot of peer learning, wherein we have small capsule of learning shots happening on a fortnightly basis, wherein employees learn from each other. So I think these forms of learning really help in learning the core skills and developing our existing employees. Because BTEL is a legacy company. We are 30 years plus. We started as a consumer organization and now are diversifying into a lot of services. So being agile, nimble for our current workforce is extremely important. So that's how we invest in them.
Just to look at this you develop a skill, but what is the practicality of that skill in terms of, I'll just give a simple IT problem. Our clients will not take people who have just been trained. They will need people who have the right, relevant, practical experience. The challenge is, even if you skill 100 people, point is, how do you get them into those roles? That's more critical. And this is not just one company. I've seen best practices across organizations is a more of a 6 months, 8 months, 6 to 12 months mentoring models, which really you work with client, you do workforce planning to look at, can they work in client projects as shadow resources, then get mentored, shadowing, reverse shadowing, whatever you call it. But those are the models which have worked effectively to actually get them with experiential learning rather than just putting a skill, put a e-learning, so do some lab exercises, solve them, get certified. That's okay. But the point is not that. Have you actually acquired practicality of that skill is very important. And that's where this whole piece of getting them industry ready to be able to have client having a comfort level that these people will really work on your projects is very important.
And the younger lot likes it. Like, for example, so while we have academies, technicals, all of that is going on, right? The younger lot likes getting into hackathons to solve real life client challenges, or smaller action learning circles, or a design studio intervention where they'll go and experiment. Now, those are other forms of learning and skill upskilling which have come in now, which are very extensively being used.
Another best practice is put gig jobs within the organization.
So I think
that's another option.
A good point.
Another point, what we are doing. We are doing a lot of many, academia and industry partnership.
Correct.
We run our own curriculum in different IITs, and we put a lot of cut sections to different technical institutions, and we make them understand how powertrain works, how engine works, how MIG welding is being done. How that way we are preparing our talent for future, and then we can hire from those institutes, and our own experts go there and teach them what is emission norms, what is electromobility, what is the hydrogen IC fuel, what is CNG fuel.
A lot of automation terms today.
See, one thing.
Raghav,
Which
I'd like to
highlight
also
here.
ask. Yes.
Talking about, this is a forum of HR professionals, okay? We're generally not a revenue generating function, right? But it gives me great pleasure to share that, L&D at a clinical research organization is a revenue generator stream. And we've been able to do that with a very active participation with academia, putting a program together where we had, let's say, a year ago, 20 people sign up for the course, for a postgraduate course. This year, we've had 80 people sign up. So what we're doing is, one, giving back to the society. Second, more importantly and selfishly, building talent pipeline. So to the point that was made, where are you getting your talent? So you're building talent, and strategically, these are not premier metro 1 cities. These are metro, I would say tier 2, tier 3 cities, where this is very aspirational for the people. And culturally, you'll find that the students coming out from here slightly have a little bit more anchor in terms of commitment, longevity. They've not yet been airbrushed by the fast pacedness of the other more metropolitan cities. And so you're finding longevity there, you're finding talent there, and it's helping you to kind of plug the gap. Then of course, when they come into the system, that is mean within the organization, then of course you build and work with them and kind of do that. So I think that was something that we did change track about, and it happened literally on year 1 of COVID. It wasn't planned that way, but it happened. But it fit in so beautifully that we've now actually made that a huge part of our learning journey for our organization.
Yes, I want to add on one more pointer here. See, talent pipeline, when we are talking about all 3 layers, right? Entry level, middle level, and leadership. That's absolutely makes sense. But technology is keep on changing. How are we preparing ourselves for the next technology drama? That is where we need to pay attention also. It's not about, you see, you're talking about skill enhancement for an individual. Correct? All of us are talking about it. Entry level person, I'm doing XYZ. Middle level, I'm doing XYZ. Leadership, I'm doing XYZ. The question comes, when the talent is going to change, when the technology is going to change, where is your XYZ?
Can I just add to it? I think, for the last hour or so, if I may say, the focus of the conversation over here has been technology training, right? That's all we've spoken. I think Sandeep also kind of made a brief reference to that. Technology. But I beg to differ, and I say that actually the focus has now to shift, not just because, Raghav, you had that on the slide there, but it has to be on people and behavioral. Technology is an acquired skill. You can do it virtually, in hybrid or whatever. Behavioral, soft is something which is very intrinsic. So you can have the most best technology kind of person, but if he doesn't have the right social skills, behavioral skills, human skills, if I can say, in today's world, is a big fat loser. It's not going to work. Whether you're an entry level person, whether you're going to be a manager, and especially if you're a people leader, it's a big no-no. So a lot of the things that over there that we saw, they have always been there. It's just that you need something like a pandemic or an event to bring them to the forefront. Yes, they'll recede over a period of time, but I don't think this time the world will go back to the way we knew normal till about a year's back. This reflection has changed. So it's I think we need to focus on technology and all the aspects, but I think aspects on behavioral, organizational, human skills, I think they've just assumed a more significance. And I do think that sometimes, even in business discussions and everything, domain expertise, IT, ye karna hai, wo karna hai, basics sometimes are just kind of kept aside. And so I think anybody who's doing that is actually going to be having a hard time a few years from now.
So Mona, you're
I'll
right.
get Raghav to make a point here.
Shall I?
Go ahead, please.
So we heard a lot. We heard in sections that T&I was being done, no more is relevant. We heard that no, there is a business need, and whatever trainings are making, that may not be relevant. Why are you really making sections over there? It's all interlinked. Trust me. See, when you say that you need to produce talent or train them in such a way that is acceptable, from where that requirement is coming? You are aware that there is a need, right? When you are doing a calendar, it can't be done in isolation by the HR people. That fine, I need to have a 50 or 100 hours of training done for people, and here is the training, and let's go ahead about it, and maybe publish it and ask nominations. Not really. Of course, one needs to sit across with business, understand what is the demand, what is the requirement, and that caters to your need also, Deepak, when you say that whether the client will accept or not. We will have that training only which is required It can't be in isolation, so that the acceptability is there. And when you say, Mona, that, of course, those behavioral aspects and all those things, of course, that is the need. Not everybody will be needing a specific training. It would be individual specific. So wherever it's required, you will plug in all of those, put it together, and then, of course, put across to your people and invite those, right?
See, I agree to your point, but these are core things. Hygiene will continue,
Mhm.
LNI will continue, calendar will continue. No one is denying that. But the point is now, even if a business leader wants you to get people skilled, you still need to look at the whole modalities of how you get people skilled is also changing. That is very important. So it's not just about these. These will continue. We have been doing this for ages now. The same effectiveness, the Kirkpatrick model, and all those we have been discussing it for ages. But have we arrived at a level for? Whatever is the way it's defined, have we arrived at it? It's a different context for every organization.
That is true, Deepak. At least in the last 20 years that I have been seeing, the basics has not changed, trust me. It's only the requirement which has to be the right, and then whether we are working it appropriately or not.
Yeah, but I
And
guess
I'm
we have to
going back
move on from the basic.
What Mona mentioned earlier. I think the reason why we are hearing more about technology even more is because of the paradigm shift that happened in the last 2 years. With pandemic coming in, we've been hearing reports, it's out there saying, we probably moved forward 10 years, 15 years, 20 years in different spaces in adopting technology and moving forward with it, which probably conventionally we were more conservative about how it would have taken us that much time, right? So I think that's where the technology thing is coming to the forefront. Having said that, I also strongly agree with what you said, Mona, that in an increasingly VUCA world, I think the human aspect is equally important, right? I think we're seeing proactively a lot of organizations and clients demanding to have, programs running in their organizations which are more orientated towards well-being of people, right? How do we really extend that sense of care, that sense of belonging in the people who work for us and our clients and the communities? So I think that's the kind of shift we are seeing, apart from, of course, your NOI, your revenues, your shareholders. I think
Empathy
this
has
is
also been
gaining
a very
importance.
sought after skill in recent times. Raghav, you were making a point. Yeah.
I just wanted to move the conversation a little bit to, I think you both spoke about talent acquisition for entry level talent, and we'd earlier spoken about higher education in India as well, right? And maybe many of you know this, and this might be helpful for some other folks. So in higher education in India, there are 4 crore students at any given point in time. There are 4 crore students. Broadly, 1 crore students graduate every year. They come out of colleges. IITs graduate 15,000 students per year. IIMs another 5,000, right? And if you take the better institutions, Symbiosis, Manipal, VIT, etc., and if you stretch it from the top institutions in the country, 1 lakh students of good quality come out, and from a total of 1 crore. Now, depending on who your organization is, right? If you are paying higher salaries, if you're a sexy brand, you're going and hiring from that 1 lakh bucket of good quality institutions where you're competing as your employer brand and where you're competing on the basis of your salary. But if you're not in that bucket, you're competing in the not so good quality, which is the vast majority of the graduates that are coming. And there, the challenge forever is going to be that you hire people and it takes you 6 months, 12 months to really get them to perform. And that will stay a challenge. It is not getting easier, it is getting harder because everybody is going after that, 1 lakh high quality bucket of talent which is emerging. And I think we touched upon this a little bit, but the fact that like Volvo, you will possibly need to get involved with campuses in building that talent, especially if you're a large organization where you hire 2, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 people, is likely to become a bigger function to what Yogi said as well in terms of talent acquisition being important in terms of roles. One of the things which I don't have today, but one of the things that we're doing is how do we take this beyond the first lakh student, high quality student population and make engagements in a scalable way for companies to come and influence the quality of that talent. So what Volvo is doing in the physical world, can we get some of that to happen in the virtual world through talent pipelines? But that's beside the point. The fact that you have a big challenge in terms of the quality
I think that's the point that I was trying to make, that we have in India.
I just want to add one sentence to what Mona said. If I look at one of the competencies in our development centers, which is social intelligence, which is much more profound than even counseling skills, coaching skills, all the soft skills, I think it's a moving ball. And I think the HR folks sitting around here or outside need to spend a lot of time in understanding what is the social skills required in the new context. Because the zeitgeist or the spirit of the times, it's a German word, is that you need to have collaborative working. You need to have also empathy, as you just mentioned. And I think it's very important to understand how people are thinking, behaving, irrespective of the demography, whether they're retired, old, young, whatever, which is a part of social intelligence. When to keep quiet, when to make a point, when to start a meeting, when to stop a meeting. All very important.
Thank you. I need to sharpen my skills. I got that message.
No.
No, I'm joking. So, I know. Yeah. All the good things he said today also, because I feel I was sitting next to him, so I take both ways.
Even if I was to look at pure play technology, like on which we were discussing, the human-led technology element is very strong. Like we were talking about driverless cars, right? Unless and until there is a human element involved in testing how it's going to work, even that technology won't work. So to her point, those human skills will be required even if you have to make a success of the technology that you're working on, right? Digital human, right?
Yeah, digitalized.
Right? Like empathy, yes, but that empathy will be required when you are also developing an application. For example, right? Netflix wouldn't be the Netflix of today if they didn't possibly do research on how users are going to get hooked onto it, right? To make it very intuitive, seamless. You need a certain skill to do that. Not every app is going to do that. So I think even just for pure play technology, we will still need the human skills as a core part for your successful development.
To humanize tech.
Humanize tech.
Yeah, that's what they say. So we move to the last segment of this roundtable discussion. Here we are going to talk about how to, assess the outcome from your learning initiatives. So all well-developed L&D strategy has key performance indicators to evaluate the progress relative to the predefined L&D target goals. Often companies already use status-based metrics such as completion rates and attendance statistics to make their KPIs measurable. We'd like to know from you, what are those business metrics that you are looking for while investing in a learning strategy? Any examples that you share would be useful to others. No, this question you cannot make a move. I'm just joking. Yeah.
I think that really tells us whether we are on the right track or not, right? So that has helped us a lot. In fact, our movement was from very low NPS to very high NPS, and I think the baseline of that has been whatever we've been doing on the learning side. Being a tech company, there's no other way out, right? You have to make people learn and make them very, very effective every day, literally. So that's what it is. But great discussion. I mean, this was a nice morning. Thank you, everybody. I have a hard stop at 12, so I would...
So, do we close this discussion, or we just...
No, please carry.
Okay, for 5 minutes, because I think, I don't want to keep you all holding and... okay, so thank you, Rajesh. Thank you for having you. So some of the metrics you would like to share, yes. Would you like to use them?
I thought I was audible. So in my previous role at Airtel, so I'm part of the group office right now, but at Airtel, and I was taking care of one of the circles. So it's a very sales heavy and network heavy organization. The metrics really, and which is what we try to do, is also link it to what the employee felt he's learned or he's delivered on the job, and not so much on the manager feedback to say, has that person done something? We tried to do something which said, started with self-assessment to say, okay, I did this training, I tried to learn something, I did some peer learning courses and some online courses, and at intervals like at the end of 6 months or 9 months, go back to the employee and have that little chat, and not necessarily, I mean, of course, a small feedback survey, but follow it up with a chat to say, how do you think you're doing better when you're doing that sale, or say when you're taking care of our towers, is our uptime better? So we started from there, and of course there's a lot of our dashboards which do the talking. It tells you that yes, the sales numbers have gone up, our network is doing better, and all of that. So I think in our case, that's the one little thing I think we tried to do. I don't know, and I'd love to know if we do that, going back to the employee and not really always going back to the manager to ask him or her, to say, has the employee done better? And first anchor it to the person who's gone through the whole learning journey or the intervention that we've planned.
Look at
Great.
levels. One at a high level, what Rajesh spoke about NPS, but that's a very high level. I look at a second level being what is the differentiation I've done for various teams. It could be for a sales leadership, sales team, in terms of whether they were able to crack better deals, the ratio of it. And that is a clear ROI that we understand. On the technology side, did we manage to get higher billable rates for individuals because they were deployed on a higher level skill? So each of the intervention is a different intervention and requires a different kind of a ROI measurement. So I wouldn't look at a single metrics for everything. I would look at, for coaching, it will be a different metrics altogether. For managers, it will be a different metrics. So I would look at being very targeted approach to it and showcasing what is the impact there in terms of those metrics for that particular engagement is what I would see it as.
In fact, just to add to what Deepak said, taking a leap from that, it's a very similar approach that we deploy in our organization as well. Different matrices for different areas of learning that we define. Now, the usual ones, of course, exist in terms of measuring productivity, measuring accuracy. The performance measures, of course, are there. But as an organization, we're also heavily focused on getting functional leadership roles offshore to India. We're a global capability center for our parent organization. So we're not just there in the number game in terms of increasing the number of headcounts over a period of time, but the quality of work that we can get to India versus doing in other parts of the world. So how many of those functional roles we're able to get to India versus the other parts of the world is, again, another measure that we deploy. And we do run different initiatives. Like, so there's a peer learning module that we drive within the organization. And that's, again, in partnership with the business. There's a skill inventory that each of the businesses maintains for their own organization. And we also take into account the individual learning aspirations for people. And it's the people themselves. To Anirban's point, it's an academy module that we follow. So people, peers learning from their own peers, experts in that particular subject are talking about those various elements. So how well they're able to deploy those skills in their respective areas is, again, another measure. And then there are various programs that we run within our diversity framework. So we call it a WIN forum, which is a Women Interest Network. And within that, we have leadership programs for women, budding women leaders. And how many of participants from that program were actually able to land up in leadership roles is, again, another ROI for us for those learning interventions. So to Deepak's point, it's different measures, different metrics for different learning interventions.
Yeah. One of them is mean skill index. How we are able to do a needle movement on the skill index of the company as well.
Yeah. What we are doing, towards the future ready organization. What are the future, competency which we need to acquire, and where are we? We identify all those future competencies, and then we, being a global organization, we have our own Volvo University, because our presence more than 120 countries, I think, and we have lot many virtual programs, lot many, tie up with the different institutions, and then one matrix we rigorously follow. What about my future ready organization? How many competency I have built within my organization, and what is my talent pipeline? And second is on the diversity, inclusion, and equity. How we are,
I'm just exploring whether we can use RCT for measuring training results. because RCT has been randomized control trials, where you have a control group and you have an experimental group. If you hold the conditions as static for the control group and for the experimental group, put them through the training, because you can't train everybody at one time.
Absolutely.
It might yield some interesting results. It's used, of course, in Abhijit Banerjee has used it as the Nobel Prize winner along with the other two. And it's used a lot in pharmaceutical industry. But I don't see why it can't be. And the first time I saw RCT being used very successfully was when Nicholas Bloom did his experiment on work from home or work from office in a company called C-Trip in China in 2016. It's very successful HR experiment. Though he doesn't say that the panacea for all ills is work from home. He's not subscribing to that. But at least the results from that experiment are very definite.
Raghav, you'd like to add here?
Yeah, so just on your question about ROI of learning, it's a little bit of a personal story which I experienced, which I thought was interesting. So I was in New York 2 months ago, and I went to this Nike store. There was a big sale on 40% discount and so on. So I bought 4 pairs of shoes. And I went to the cash counter or the billing counter to pay, and this guy says, "Sir, do you have the Nike app?" I said, "No, I don't." "Why don't you download it? There's an additional 20% off." So I was like, "Yeah, why not? I'll download it." So I downloaded the Nike app and I got 20% off. And I was like, "But why are you giving me another 20% off? I already have 40% off." So he says, "Sir, we've been told that the value of a customer who stays connected with us on the app is twice that of a customer who does not stay connected on the app." And to me, that's the ROI of training, right? If you can actually deliver business impact by cascading it to the front levels, to me, that's the ROI of training. So yeah, that's the story.
Wonderful points. Yes.
Somebody else comes in.
So as we conclude this discussion today,
I still have the app, by the way.
as we conclude this discussion today, we do acknowledge the fact that one of the most significant investments any business can make is in its people. This goes beyond the simple fact of paying for salaries and benefits. However, in order to be truly valuable element of a company, employees must be genuinely nurtured. They should be provided with the tools and knowledge to become skilled contributors and the incentive to use it innovatively. How do you plan? With this, we end this discussion today. I don't want to put in more questions. And thank you so much for being such an engaging panelists. And we had really wonderful discussion. I hope a lot of ground was covered and you all will be walking away with great takeaways. And I have special thanks to give Yogi sir for being here with us and really helping us kickstart this discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.